Hello, I'm Charlie Rhindress. I seemed like I was surprised by that. The video ended all of a sudden, and there I was. Anyway, hello and welcome to Stompin Tom Remembered. This is a 6-part series, streaming series I'm doing on Facebook. I'm doing it every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Atlantic time, and this is our second episode tonight. And over the next, from now till November 19th, I'm going to be interviewing people who knew and or worked with Stompin Tom. Now, I am the author of this book, Stompin Tom Connors, The Myth and the Man, and I was supposed to last June tour Ontario on a book tour, and because of COVID, it got canceled. So my publisher, Formac Publishing, approached me and said, let's do it online instead. So I've created a Facebook page with the same name as the book, Stompin Tom Connors, The Myth and the Man, and there I'll be sharing stories, a lot of the research that I found while I was working on the book. But most importantly, from that Facebook page, every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Atlantic time, I'll be interviewing someone who knew and or worked with Tom. I've written a couple biographies. I wrote the Stompin Tom biography, and I also wrote one about Rita McNeil called I'm Not What I Seem. Get that light to make it a little bright. Anyway, but one of the more interesting things about doing these books are the people I get to interview. So I'm excited I get to share that with you. Stompin Tom, those of you who saw him in concert, he quite often would say, in case you thought you were coming to a concert tonight, you were wrong. You came to a party. And in my book, I actually interviewed Duncan Fremlin and Mickey Andrews, who both worked with Tom. They were both band members and they toured with him. And Duncan Fremlin said, a show with Tom was like a show in his kitchen and the people in the audience were the guests at his house. When it was suggested to Mickey Andrews that Tom's shows were like a kitchen party, he readily agreed, saying, that's a good term. Kitchen party is right. He created his own Stompin Tom party, whether the venue was big or small, anywhere. So that's why I'm doing the show from my kitchen. So welcome to my kitchen. I'm coming to you from Amherst, Nova Scotia, and we had to do all the dishes because the kitchen was a mess. But here we are. We're going to do our Stompin Tom show from the kitchen in honor of Stompin Tom. And one of the things I'm hoping you find out over these next 6 episodes is you get to understand Tom Connors, the man, a little bit. One of the things that I discovered as I was working on the book, and the reason I called it Stompin Tom Connors, The Myth and the Man, is the Stompin Tom Connors in many ways was a creation of the man named Tom Connors. And over these interviews, I hope you get to know the man a little better. I've got a little quote here I'm going to read to you. This is another little bit from the book that sort of sets up the interview series, and then I'll bring on my guest. Tom left behind a rich legacy of stories and characters. Margot with her cargo, Big Joe Mufferaw, Bud the Spud, Red River Jane, and Ben from the Pen all live on in the imagination of Canadians. So does the character of Stompin Tom. But Stompin Tom was very different from Tom Connors. Duncan Fremlin, who was my guest last week, wrote, his onstage persona was lowbrow, I think intentionally so. He went to great extremes to demonstrate to his fans that Stompin Tom was not just humble and uneducated, but an illiterate country bumpkin. Those of us in Tom's inner circle knew that he was anything but a country bumpkin. Tom's friend Steve Fruitman said simply, Stompin Tom was a cartoon. Tom Connors was a human being. And it's Steve Fruitman I have with me today as my second guest, as my guest this evening. Steve is a DJ. He's a musicologist. He first met Tom back in 1971, and he actually conducted Tom's very last interview ever. And as by way of, I interviewed a number of people, well over a dozen, I think, for the book, but Steve's probably the person I talked to the most. And I'm going to read you. So he shows up a lot in this book. I'm just going to read you a little bit about what I say about Steve, and then we'll bring him on. Tom started 1971 with another month-long stint at the Horseshoe. The Horseshoe Tavern in Toronto was sort of Canada's Grand Ole Opry. One fan who got to know Tom at the shoe that year was Steve Fruitman, a grade 13 student at Thornlea Collegiate. Fruitman had been a fan of Tom since discovering his music in 1965. More than 50 years later, Steve remembered the first sounds he ever heard from Stompin Tom as a friend put Luke's guitar on the record player. As Tom sang out, twang, twang, Fruitman said, I just got goosebumps hearing that. Steve was hooked. His friend, on the other hand, thought it was a joke. The young men represented 2 schools of thought that persisted throughout Tom's career. There are those who hold that Tom's music was important, while others, as Steve said, just see the clown. Fruitman had a radio show on campus at Thornlea Collegiate in Toronto and went to see Tom in hopes of securing an interview. He talked to Tom after a performance one night, and Tom agreed to meet with the young man the next day. Fruitman was thrilled to interview the performer whose career he'd followed for the past 6 years. He just treated me like a professional, Steve said, as if I was any interviewer from any radio station. He was very friendly and a little bit cautious of what he would say. He was always very cautious about what he would tell people. Steve eventually became a musicologist and a DJ. His website, Back to the Sugar Camp, features interviews with countless artists and is an invaluable source of lesser-known Canadian music. He and Tom became lifelong friends, and Steve interviewed Tom a number of times over the next 40-odd years, even conducting the last interview Tom ever gave. So I'm going to bring Steve Fruitman on now, and he can tell us more about himself and his relationship with Tom. And here we go. Steve, hello.
Hello.
Now, did I get most of that? You haven't read the book yet. So
no, I haven't read the book. Everything you said so far is correct. I don't have any problem with it.
Okay, good.
My lawyers are listening.
Well, what I do, actually, people may find this interesting. When I interview people, as you recall, I say to them, I'm recording this and I'll transcribe it, but before I publish it, I'll send it to you in case there's anything you don't want. Because sometimes people, they get talking to me and they say something and then later go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. So that I feel like it sort of enables people to be a little freer about what they say if they know they're going to have another look. So I did it. Well, before it was published, I did send you everything, but
you did.
Yeah. Anyway, but I know that's the first time you've heard what I said about you. So,
yeah.
So you're a DJ and a musicologist. Tell people what a musicologist is. I saw that phrase all the time describing you online.
I don't know. I've never used it myself.
Oh, really? It's just other people say that.
I'm just really into music. Always have been. And you know, when I first found Tom, of course, it was at the height of the Beatlemania craze. Right. And so I was caught between two worlds because I loved rock and roll and I loved Stompin Tom Connors.
Wow. Yeah. And you did find it was a friend played Luke's guitar, right?
You know, I was from Timmins originally, and after we moved down to Toronto, my mom would send me back up in the summertime. So in 1965, she sent me back up. So I took my entire record collection, which was Beatles and Animals and Beach Boys, you know, and Searchers. I brought them all up to Timmins, about 12 albums, and I played them for my friend. And I went to his house, and I said, what new records have you got this year? He says, but just one.
Yeah.
And it was a CKGB recording, which was the local radio station, of Stompin Tom, which was then just Tom Connors with guitar.
That's how he was credited, right?
Yeah. Doing The Birth of the New Dragon Mine. And on the flip side was Luke's guitar. So
it was the B-side.
Guitar. What's that?
It was the B-side then, Luke's guitar.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
He thought he would sell the Birth of the New Dragon Mine, which was about the mining find in 1964 up in Timmins, a big strike of copper. Right. And it was a big rush. The stockbrokers were going crazy. And Tom wrote this song, The Birth of the New Dragon Mine. And he stopped singing it shortly afterwards because they changed the name of the mine to the Kidd Creek Mine.
Oh, okay.
Originally, they called it the Dragon Mine. So he stopped singing the song, and I would always play it. And whenever I got together with him, I would play that song. And he just looked at me and he says, well, I better record that song again, you know. And he put it on his 2008 album, The Ballad of Stompin Tom. But I think he changed the name of the mine to the Texas Gulf Mine. He called it the Birth of the Texas Gulf Mine.
Okay.
But originally it was recorded in 1965.
Okay. I love your impersonation of Tom, and I will warn people, sometimes Tom, your version of Tom swears. I don't know. Did real Tom swear?
Never.
Whenever you're telling me a story.
I just do it because I like it.
You told me you'd keep the swearing down tonight, but I find it very funny. I love your Tom impersonation. It's great.
Thank you.
So now you did this. You were in 1971. You just went to see him and said, "Can I interview you?" And he let you. You were just a student, right?
I was just a high school student.
Wow.
And you know, this one kid said we should go down to the Horseshoe one night in 1970, I believe, and see this guy. You know, he's really sings about Canada and all that kind of stuff. And I'd lost track of Tom because after he left Timmins around 1966, there was a period of about three or 4 years I didn't see or hear of him. And then I saw him after the hockey game one day on a show called Vic Mullins' show. I can't remember, a CBC show.
Okay.
And Tom was the guest performer, and I couldn't believe it. And he sang Luke's guitar.
Oh, wow. Your song.
There he is, you know. Yeah. So when a friend of mine said Tom Connors from Timmins and he's playing at the Horseshoe, we all borrowed people's IDs You had to be 21 in those days to get into a bar, right?
Right. Okay.
So we were all about 18, 19. We went down, and I think they kicked us out after the first set.
Right. Okay. So you
Because
did get to see him.
yeah, we got to see him, and we kept coming back. But after that, we were okay guys because we
Right.
proved ourselves that we were capable of behaving.
Okay. Do you know, I want to show a little clip here. I have a little clip that I found online of Tom in 2005 doing Luke's guitar. So it's later in his life. There was a concert that they filmed. This became a big controversy because he filmed it with the idea that CBC was going to air it, and then they didn't. And then Tom ended up, his company released it themselves, and they actually made a lot of money off it. It became one of his biggest selling items ever. But there was quite a controversy with CBC at the time. But I'm just going to play a little bit of Luke's guitar and we can talk about that, because I want to talk about how that song affected you, and then we're going to talk about how you got to know Tom. And you gave me, just so people know, you sent me all kinds of great pictures last night, which we're going to show here in a minute too. But first, let's watch Tom just do a little bit of Luke's guitar.
Twang, twang, a deedle dang, a deedle dang, a twang, 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 a deedle dang, another dang, twang, another dang, twang, another dang, twang. I've been married now for a year or more, and my old guitar hangs by the door. That woman of mine says, "Hawk that Luke, 'cause your mama dear needs a brand new suit." Well, I hawked my watch, I sold my dog upon the gasoline stove. I hawked my ring and everything just to keep that woman in clothes. I even pawned a cat, I hawked my boots, and I sold a family car. But that woman of mine will be 109 before I hawk my old guitar. Clang, clang, ring, a clang, a clang, a clang, clang, a deedle dang, another dang clang, another dang clang, another dang clang.
Okay, you know what? Okay, first of all, so what was it about that affected you so much the first time you heard it?
Well, I've analyzed it over the last 55 or odd years or so I might have an answer to you.
Okay.
A lot of his songs, and this was very unusual for, some singers do it every once in a while, but a good portion of his songs, like Bud the Spud had it, and he just bashes you over the head with the first four notes.
Okay.
First part of the song. Twang, twang. I mean, come on, how are you supposed to react to that? It's Bud the Spud. He just clobbers you with it. She's on a burr, hopping spree, and his facial expressions and everything when he did it live were amazing.
That's why I wanted to talk about that, because the part of the reason I used that clip was his face at the end. He was an actor as much as anything, right? And
yeah.
So the whole idea,
the whole Stompin Tom thing was an act.
Well, exactly. And it's so funny because so many of his fans are like, he was so honest. And I'm not saying he was dishonest, but they think that what they saw on stage was what he was like when he was hanging out in his basement.
No, he wasn't like that at all in his basement.
And what was the difference? Like, what would you say the big difference was between Stompin' Tom and Tom? Because like you said to me, that quote, I love that quote. You said Stompin' Tom was a cartoon and Tom Connors was a human being.
Well, it's exactly it. I mean, that's precisely. I don't think I have to give you any more than that as an answer, because that's exactly what it was like. You're just like you're with a guy who just happened to have created a lot of these great songs, knew a lot of history, knew a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And he put that in his songs in a humorous way in a lot of cases. And he was very, very smart. Like he was always, I think Duncan said he was the smartest guy in the room.
Yes, he did. No, sorry, Mickey Andrews. Mickey
Andrews. He was wrong. When I was with him, I was the smartest guy in the room. So, I mean.
So he was the second smartest guy then.
He was the second smartest guy, yeah.
Yeah. Mickey Andrews played with him at the Horseshoe and then right through till off and on till the end of his life. And I interviewed him as well. And Mickey, he said that repeatedly, that Tom was the smartest guy in the room. So
yeah, he was. He really, really was.
And like people don't know as well when it came to like he was very competitive and he played chess and checkers and apparently nobody could beat him. Is that true?
There were people
or is that part of the myth? Okay.
He showed me a game with matches. I don't want to get into how it gets played, except you lose all the time when you play with him. And he forced me. He says, "You're not I'm not letting you go. You got to stay where you are in that seat. Get him another beer, and you're not leaving until you beat me."
Really? Okay. And did you finally beat him?
After a couple hours, one match. match. I should obviously it was matches, but
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Now, we have a couple of comments I'm just going to let you know about. John Arsenault wrote, "Hi, Steve. Welcome. Please join us on the Stompin Tom Connors fan club page on Facebook." But you're not actually on Facebook, are you?
no, I think they're evil.
Now, they're streaming our show right now, so we'll just leave that alone. But
I just got boycotted. Okay.
No, it's okay. The show's also on YouTube. So
much better.
Anyway, and a friend of mine, Carl, is watching. So hello to Carl. And Ron Cunningham just wrote 1971, Port Elgin, Ontario, and hooked for life. He saw Tom once and was hooked for life. And that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about.
That's what happened.
I never got to see Tom live. I've done research. I've talked to people like you, but I didn't see him live. And when I watched that performance, I did read a lot that there was no way records could capture when you saw him on live. Or when you saw him live, it was kind of unbelievable how he was connected with the audience in a way not a lot of other performers do.
Well, one of my favorite Stompin' Tom record has always been Live at the Horseshoe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they just re-released it. They fixed it up, and it sounds great now. But it was a terrible production. You can hear the difference in audience level sound, between the tracks.
Oh,
it would just be up here, and then all of it was down here. I mean, it was terrible, but it captured his spirit of his stage act. And he put out the across this land.
Yes,
Stompin' Tom.
Yeah, that film. Yeah.
And it was live too, but he was more aware of the fact he was being filmed, I guess, for the movie.
Oh, okay.
But Live at the Horseshoe just captured the essence of the man.
Okay.
It was great.
Well, if people want to check out, get as close to performance as they can, I guess that's the album to check out. Yeah. So now, definitely. I wanted to talk. So you interviewed Tom back then, but then you were kind of surprised. You did a radio show. You told me this story, and I don't think I put it in the book, about you did a radio show with Charlie Angus, and you had no idea Tom would be listening. Why don't you tell people about that? Tell people about that. That must have been kind of exciting for you.
Well, Charlie Angus grew up in Timmins. So we're both Timmins lads.
Charlie Angus is now an MP, member of Parliament for the NDP party. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sorry.
But he's also a musician. He's the lead vocalist in the Grievous Angels, has been for about 30 years.
Yeah.
And he came through the punk scene. So, he came through a different generation than I did. He's about 15, 20 years younger than me. So we both loved Stompin' Tom Connors, and we both met through the music. And I just said, well, we should do a show together. Yeah, I just started doing this new radio show at CIUT at that time, and it was 1988. And I said, let's do a show. And as a lark, I phoned Tom's management, his record company, and I told them, whoever answered the phone, I can't remember, that I'd be doing this interview with this guy and about Tom, playing Tom's music. So we did the show, Charlie and I, and then we went to leave the station. And they phoned, and there was this guy, DB Hawks, who's still at the station after all these years. He answered the phone, and it was Tom, and he wanted to say thank you to Charlie and I. And DB, yeah, sure, it's not Tom Connors. Yeah, sure. Hangs up on the guy.
Really?
So Tom phoned him back immediately, and so DB realized it was really him.
Wow. And is that where your friendship with Tom started, as opposed to no?
No, I decided to do a show on Stevedore Steve.
Oh,
and this was in April or May of 1989.
Now,
Steve had been.
Oh, sorry. You go ahead. I was gonna explain who Stevedore Steve is for people
go
who
ahead.
don't know.
You do it. Nice to hear what someone else has to say about
he and Tom kind of grew up together in St. John when they were like teenagers, and they hitchhiked across the country, and they sort of had a similar path. And Steve also did a lot of Canadian music and stuff, but he never achieved the success that Tom did. And they had a strained relationship by times. And anyway, you take it from there.
Well, they were brothers. I mean, they were hitchhiking across the country for 16 years together.
Right.
And they learned how to play music together. So they picked up little guitar bits, like Steve picked up stuff from Tom, and Tom picked up stuff from Steve. And, so many stories of being on the road that Tom tells, most of them were with Steve.
Right.
So I wanted to do a show that highlighted Steve, because he'd been out of the music scene at that time from about 1976.
He did have his one big hit was Lester the Lobster, right?
Yeah, that was his big hit song.
Yeah.
And there was a radio show in Toronto, a rock and roll show in the mornings on CFNY, I think, that used to use that song as their theme song.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I wanted to do a show on a retrospective on Steve. And I thought, well, maybe if Tom would write me a little blurb or something about the guy, I can read it over the air. So I phoned Tom's management and I started getting the runaround. The guy says, no, he's not doing any interviews. No, he's not. He won't do it. No, I said, do you know who I'm talking about? Stevedore Steve? He said, no, I have no idea who you're talking about.
This is Tom's manager. Had no idea. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't really a manager. It was his neighbor.
That's right. Yes, at that point. Because Tom was still sort of retired at that point. He put out an album, but he hadn't really come back in 1989.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I just said, mention Stevedore Steve to him, or your name is Mud. Because if I ever see him and tell him that you didn't know, being his manager, who Stevedore Steve was. So the guy does it. So he gets back to me the next day and he says, yeah, Tom will give you an interview. Give me your phone number. He'll call in. But no longer than 5 minutes. And I hadn't been asking for an interview. I just thought he'd write a blurb.
Wow. And so, I'd just like to tell people that Tom had been retired for a dozen years at that time, and he was not doing interviews. He might have.
He just did the Peter Zosky one.
I was going to say he did one with Peter Zosky, and that was that was it?
That was it.
Wow.
So I was the second one to do. So they told me no more than 5 minutes, and they were really, just 5 minutes, not a second over. I said, okay, no problem. Whatever you guys want, I'll do it. I mean, getting Stompin Tom on the radio. So they wrote about it in the Toronto Sun that this guy, Steve Fruitman, who is a show at CIUT, is going to be having Stompin Tom Connors on out of retirement. Everybody at the station were very impressed with me, getting right up in Toronto media for the radio station. So anyways, Tom came on and he talked for 20 minutes.
Wow.
Just telling stories of being on the road with Steve.
Oh,
so that was the first time, and he liked me after that, because I done that thing with Charlie, and now I did this thing. He never would have expected anybody would remember Stevedore Steve at that time, especially guys with long hair,
Well, the funny thing is, Duncan Fremlin last week when I had him on as a guest, I said that you were going to be on this week, and he said Steve was one of the only DJs Tom liked. Actually, maybe the only DJ Tom liked. Yeah. Because Tom,
he said, because I played his songs, right?
Yeah,
and I used to do a thing where I would, it's Stompin Tom time, and I every show and I play a Stompin Tom song, and he loved that.
Yeah, well, Tom, he didn't trust radio. He had a problem with radio because they didn't play enough Canadian and stuff. And you, on the other hand, he really liked. Now, I have a couple comments I want to share with you because they're people you know. Duncan Fremlin, because I know Duncan does a birthday celebration for Tom every year, and you've appeared at that. I know.
Yeah.
But he said, "Welcome to Charlie's great show." I don't know if it's great, but that's good. But he said, "I can't stay and enjoy you live, but I'll certainly watch tomorrow. Tell the audience something unexpected. You must know things about Tom that no one else knows. Be outrageous." So there you go. I thought that comment was worth reading because if you want to be outrageous and get, we'll get a lot of attention.
Did I tell you, Charlie, about the bat?
No, I don't know the bat story. Okay,
so I'll tell you the bat story. Very few people I know have a bat story that they have. Stompin Tom Connors is one of the protagonists of the story.
Yeah.
And it was up in Timmins at the Bonnier Motel, and the band were playing in Matheson, which is about 50 miles away, and sort of right between Kirkland Lake and Cochrane and Timmins, so that would be a good place to play. And so I can't remember. It wasn't Duncan's turn. I think it was one of the other band members' turn to stay up all night. Of course, Duncan would have told you those stories, right?
We didn't I don't know if we get into that, but we may have. But in the contracts for the band player, at least one person had to stay up till 6 a.m. with them every night, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was true.
They took turns. Okay.
They took turns.
So it was somebody's turn that night.
Who was very pleased to have me there. And he said, "You want to stay with them all night, Steve?" I said, "Sure."
Okay, yeah.
This was 1993.
You're like, I get to hang out with Stompin Tom all night. That's okay.
Yeah, my son and I. So we were just, it was a very balmy night. They weren't playing that night. They were playing the next night. Yeah. So Tom and I got into the beer, played some songs, and a bat flew into the room. The door was open, it's a storm door, and a bat flew into the room. So I get to spend a half an hour with Tom trying to catch a bat. So that's a story that probably nobody knows.
There you go. And did you catch the bat in the end?
Yeah, we caught it in his Campbell soup can.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, Tom used to like drinking soup.
He drank soup. I know he ate straight out of the can too, right? A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
He liked it out of the can, yeah.
Mike Dunlop is someone else you know, and he said
Yeah.
it was great to be able to add Steve's notes about Tom and some personal images in the Stompin' Tom Sings Old Time Favorites release we did a few years ago. Thanks again, Steve. So what was that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Tom recorded 10 albums back in around 1969-71 era
Yeah.
of old-time favorite songs. And these were like old country songs, Doc Watson, Merle Travis, Hank Williams type songs.
Yeah.
And they, of course, went out of print. No one has ever repackaged those. There was like a box set of 5 LPs in 2 different volumes.
Oh, okay.
So, whenever you were at Tom's house, he wouldn't play any of his own songs. Maybe if you were really good, he might play one.
Right.
Like, oh, yeah, I'll play Rubberhead for you,
And he'd sing it, you mean, or he'd play it, like play
he'd
the
sing
record?
and play it, yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah.
mostly he was just playing old-time country songs.
Oh, okay.
And, I brought an old-timer over with me, a guy in his 80s, and he just started mentioning songs to Tom. Oh, I haven't played that song in 40 years. God, let's see how it goes. And he'd remember it.
Wow.
Like it was amazing.
I actually have a little radio clip of you talking to Tom about that, which we're going to play in a minute. But yeah.
Okay.
So you got asked to do the liner notes for that album or for that release? Is that?
No, he went back in the studio the year before he died to record another album. And he thought, well, the hell, I'll bring the band in for the album, but then I'm going to record 10 more albums of country songs that I haven't sung yet.
Okay. And those are when he died, there were 200 songs in the vault, as they called them.
Yeah.
And
those are the ones.
And you worked on the liner notes for one of those releases.
Yeah. And after that, Anthem Records took it over, and it's their ball game now. But yeah, I did the original liner notes for it.
Wow. Okay. So look, I'm going to actually, I'm supposed to, you and I, whenever we talk, the times I interviewed you for the book, it was 2 or 3 hours. And
how could it possibly not be?
I know. And I've talked to you twice this week, and it's been like at least half an hour to an hour. And my publisher's like, keep the show to 45 minutes, Charlie. But I don't know if he watches the whole thing. So we're half an hour in. He may not see this part. I'm not sure, but they keep telling me, keep it to 45. So in theory, we got 15 minutes, but we might go a little long. But I do want to show what I did. I pulled the audio from one of your interviews with Tom. This is one right after you did a 75th birthday show, and there's a couple things I want to talk about, and then I want to show some of the pictures you had and talk about your partying with Tom. So when this is playing, it'll just mute us, and what I did was I pulled the audio and added a few pictures that you sent me of you and Tom together. So Here we go. We'll listen to this. It's only just over a minute long, and then we'll talk about it. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Stompin' Tom, are you there?
I'm here, Steve, and how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, since the last time I saw you on the weekend. I survived.
Yeah, we had a great time last night.
We did, and we sat around. You played all kind of country western songs from way back when. You know literally hundreds of songs by heart.
Oh, I do know quite a few, all right. When I started out my career in your hometown, Timmins,
Yep.
I knew 2,300 songs at that time.
2,300 songs.
I don't know how many I've learned or written since, but yeah, I know quite a few.
It never ceases to amaze me when you can just sit there and think of a song that, you may not have played in years and years, and you know all the words by heart. When did you start learning country songs?
Oh, boy, that was way back almost before I can remember. I was just a baby when I used to watch my mother stand before a mirror with an old fedora on and play a broom and strum on the broom and pretend she was a cowboy and sing and yodel the old Wolf Carter songs and all that stuff. And I guess little did she know at the time that little tot that was crawling around the floor was going to take it all in. And yeah, a few years, not too long later, a couple of years later, when I got orphaned, I was singing all those songs my mother used to sing to the kids in the orphanage.
There, that story, I use that in the book, that when he got to the orphanage, he used to get picked on a lot, and they didn't have a lot of food, and there were kids who would steal like a piece of bread or a cookie from the kitchen, and he'd sing a song and they'd give him food. So he actually used this early on, before he was making money. He would sing a song for some food or something. So.
He had his smarts back then, eh?
Exactly, yeah. Now, the funny thing is, you sent me a picture, and I'm going to make us a little smaller here because I'm going to bring up the picture. But last night when you sent a picture, I noticed the date on it. At the start of that interview, you say, we were hanging out on Saturday night, and the pictures you sent are from that Saturday night. So I'm going to leave
the ones,
you, yeah. But so I'm going to leave you and I up. I could blank us out, but that's you hanging out with Tom. Now he had a room down in his basement that he turned into a bar, right? That's a pool table and
no, that was on the main floor.
That's what?
No.
Sorry,
that's on the main floor.
Oh, that's the main floor of the house.
That's
okay.
Where we are right there in that picture.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's where the bar is, where his beer is on the bar.
Okay, and that's his beer that he drank at room
temperature. And you can see the pool table in the background there. Yeah. In his basement, he had a museum of all his awards and stuff like that, and his handyman's room.
Oh, okay. I've heard Duncan talked about rehearsing in the furnace room and playing music on there. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
He liked the furnace room.
Now you talk about you survived that Saturday night. Now I have heard you said something to me. I think it was before we went on the started streaming about Tom stayed up 24 hours. People have said, and you can verify this, that you would party literally all night. He'd sleep for 3 or 4 hours and then start again. Is that true?
No, I don't think. Well, certainly not towards the end. He was. The myth was he could stay up all night, and he would tell you he stayed up all night. But Lena used to tell me he goes to sleep.
Oh,
don't believe that. Don't believe that shit. but you know, I mean, his life was like as a performer before he got, before he went into retirement in '76, I guess. He was playing all the time. I mean, and so you're up all night to 1 or 2 in the morning, and you're kind of like, after a gig, you don't want to sleep. Your adrenaline's still flowing, and so you go to bed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and he just stayed that way for years and years and years and never changed.
Wow. Okay. So you did party late, but he did get some sleep at some point.
Yeah. He didn't party a lot. He just liked to sit at the bar drinking beer and shoot the shit with people.
Oh, okay. And
that's what it was like.
Right. And was there a lot of jamming? Because here's another picture you sent. This looks like a jam of some sort. What's going on there?
Well, we were supposed to be outside, but it rained, and this is on his property. So he had the tents up just in case, but I think we still got wet.
Oh, okay. And that's you in the blue shirt, right there, second from the left?
Yeah, it's me with the blue shirt. Now Widmer there on the dobro, and Tim Hadley on the bass. They were in his band.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who the harmonica player is.
That's Al Widmer, you said, with the
That's
dobro?
Al, yeah, on the dobro.
I interviewed him for the book, but I've never met him. So, and that's him there. There's another picture here I like. This is you with Tom in the background with his cigarette holder.
Yeah, of course.
He felt that he got a little less nicotine with the cigarette holder, right?
He swore by him.
That's funny. Now, do you know what this picture is? This is an older one.
That's in the motel room in Timmins. This is a great fiddler Graham Townsend there picking his nose in the front there.
Oh, okay.
I think he's picking his nose. He looks like he's picking his nose.
He certainly looks like he is. Yeah, I know.
That was Graham. He was on the tour. He was in the band that year.
Oh, okay. So this is that night in Timmins when you stayed up till 6 in the morning with him. And then you also sent me this one, which you said was Tom's family.
No, it's my family.
Oh, okay, because it says Tom's family. The picture is captioned Tom's family, and I was I don't see Lena, and I didn't recognize.
No, that's
Tom
my
Jr.
wife, my kids, my nephew, and Graham and Tom.
Oh wow, okay, that's a great picture as well.
Yeah.
And then I went online myself because this is you with Duncan Fremlin at the 80th Tom's 80th birthday. Duncan was my guest last week. That's him with the banjo and you with the guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So and then one of the other pictures you sent was this. You Stompin Tom Road.
That's in Prince Edward Island.
That's in Skinner's Pond. There's now
Pond.
There's now a center there. I assume it wasn't there at the time, but
it wasn't there then. No, I've been there though. It's really cool. It's a really good building, and Tom would be proud because there's about 1,000 cigarette butts in front, laying on the grass.
A lot of smokers go there, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. They can't smoke inside, right?
I do. I love this picture you sent of you and Tom as well. Yeah. It looks like you might be having fun there. I'm not sure. Tom looks like he could be a little drunk.
Well, he was, but that was at Hughes' room.
Oh, was it? Okay. Oh,
yeah,
great.
we did a special special tribute night for him when he turned 65.
Oh, was that? So that was his 65th birthday.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's very cool. And then
he didn't want to come because he couldn't smoke, and they put a special table for him where he could smoke.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they made a little smoking area for him. So
wow. I'm sure a lot of people are jealous that you got to hang out with Tom and like just sit around
Too
and sing
bad.
with him. Yeah. There's one more story, and one more story I wanted to talk to you about was near the end of his life, and to me, it's one of the things I found most interesting about the book. And you told me this story that it got harder to do the stomping, and you went to see him one night, and you were talking to him. And anyway, why don't you tell that story about when Tom talked to you about stomping and your suggestion, and anyway, where it went from there.
Well, there was this whole troupe of performers like Johnny Cash, that age group that were getting older and still performing. And I noticed that Cash had done a thing where he just, the band goes backstage and he just sits with his guitar in front and plays a few songs acoustically.
Yeah.
So Tom was complaining about going on the road. Everybody wants to see him stomp all the time, and he found it really hard. I mean, the guy was in his mid-70s, and he doesn't do it all the time. Like, he only played like a several-week tour every summer.
Yeah.
So the rest of the year he's not stomping, he's not practicing, and it's hard on the leg, especially the way he stomps and the way people want to hear him stomp.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful. So I just said, well, Tom, why don't you just do what Johnny Cash does and come out and do a few songs acoustically, and the people are enjoying it. You can sing a few old country songs that way, and like you do around your bar. And of course, he poo-pooed all that. No fucking way, Fruitman. Will I do that? People come to see me goddamn stomp, and they're gonna see me stomp. So his next tour, he goes out and does what I told him to do.
He did start to do that. I know. And
he did it. Yeah, he did it. And he liked it. It worked. People loved it.
Al Widmeyer said it became one of the highlights of the show almost every night. He would stop stomping, he'd sit on the stool, do some old time songs, and then he'd sing the Ballad of Stompin' Tom, and he'd end up with a standing ovation every night. So
every night. And the thing was that he didn't want to do it originally because he thought it would tarnish his image as a rodeo clown.
Right. Yeah. Because it's funny.
But it was something that exposed his guitar picking. Because on his songs, you don't really hear how good a guitar picker he is, because he always had a lead guitar player with him.
Right. Okay.
But then, the guy was a good picker.
So when he
he can do delicate guitar picking, So you really heard it when he was playing Hank Snow songs, and on the stage, just him and his guitar.
Yeah.
No stomping.
I wrote about it in the book because I said that it was almost like he finally, after all those years, let the audience in to see Tom Connors as opposed to Stompin' Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for those few minutes.
Well put.
So now we have a couple more comments, and then you're going to do a song for us so we'll switch. Maybe I'll read that little bit of the book while you go to do the song. But Alan Dalton wrote, "Hi Steve and hi Charlie." He's from PEI, formerly from Ontario, and he's been watching the show and sending me pictures and stuff. And there's a guy named John Cox, and he wrote to me with a great story. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing it. But he's an American. He's from Louisiana, and he's a Stompin' Tom fan. And I gave away a couple books last week, and he won one. And I was like, how does a guy from Louisiana end up a Stompin' Tom fan? Apparently, he visited every state in the United States and then decided he'd work through the Canadian provinces. And he'd been to a few of them. And then Tom passed away, and he read an article about him. He bought a CD, and he got hooked. And for the rest, each year, he'd come visit a different province, and Tom would be like his tour guide or whatever. But he learned a ton about Canada from Stompin' Tom as he drove around discovering our country. I just think that's a great story.
Perfect.
It's like so great.
I mean, those are the kind of stories that Tom would relish to hear.
Because that's what he wanted. He just wanted people to tell stories about Canada, right?
Yeah.
And we got Bernie Kaiser from Amherst watching. Hi, Bernie, and Don Angus from Erin, Ontario. Oh, no, Emo, Ontario. There you go. Emo. I read it wrong. So before you do your song, because you're going to do your song and you're going to move to do that. So I'm going to fill in with, I can read, maybe I'll read that chunk about him on the stool, because I quite enjoyed, I got stuff from you and Al Widmeyer that I was really happy with. And then we'll let you do your song. And maybe I'll give away a couple books and we'll be done. So is there anything, just before I let you do your song, anything people would be surprised or shocked about Stompin' Tom that you'd like to share? Is there a story that I haven't? I know there's tons. I had a list, and we've touched like 3 of them, I think.
He was working on a book of philosophy when he died. Right. He'd been writing it for several years, deep philosophy.
Yeah, because he studied world religions and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he
had his own theories on things, and
it sort of tied all the religions of the world together, or something, or wasn't it, or something, or
when a man makes a 3,000-year calendar, He's got a unique perspective of the universe.
That's true. People might not know that Tom made a 3,000-year calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, I'm going to let you go off screen for a second. A friend of mine just wrote, what a beautiful story about John Cox. I thought so, too. As soon as he wrote to me, I was like, I want to tell that story, or I may have him on and interview him sometime because I love it. So I'm just going to read a little tiny bit of my book while you rearrange yourself.
Okay, and should my wife's going to hold the phone when I perform?
Okay.
Should she have it sideways? Is it okay sideways?
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm just going to go to just me, and I'm going to mute you for a second.
Okay.
There we go. Because I'm doing all of this, but I'm also like the producer and the director. I'm working all the screens and stuff like that. But I actually, that bit, what Steve was talking about there with Tom going on stage every now and just sitting on the stool and not stomping and just singing songs. I wrote about that in the book. And this is actually, I'm quoting Steve here. The next tour, he starts sitting down and singing 3 or 4 Hank Snow songs. About halfway through his set, Tom would sit on a stool, play guitar, and sing some of those old country songs that had inspired him as a child. Those songs that his mother loved and would sing along to. Al Widmeyer, who was also in Tom's band, said he wanted the people to know he could play guitar. People would say, geez, I didn't know Tom could pick like that. Well, yeah, he could play the guitar. He could pick the guitar, Al added. He wanted his audience to get to know him a little better. You know, he's not just the guy that stands up there and stomps. And he'd sit there and he'd have a conversation. After more than 4 decades as a performer, Tom was letting go of Stompin' Tom for a few minutes every night and letting the audience see Tom Connors, the musician and the singer, the man who would jam late into the night in motel rooms or in his bar at home. Tom finished that section of the show by singing the Ballad of Stompin' Tom. Widmeyer marveled at how the audience responded to the song. He said, well, every time he did the Ballad of Stompin' Tom, it didn't matter where it was. He always got a standing ovation. Every time, he added. And it's really weird. Some of these concerts where there's thousands of people sitting out there, and all of a sudden when he finished, that people would automatically stand up and give him a standing ovation. Oh, yeah. Tom was crying. He had tears running down his eyes. It was emotional. He was a very emotional man. So that's a little bit from my book, Stompin' Tom Connors, The Myth and the Man. Anyway, and I got some of that from Steve and some of it from Al Widmeyer. And now we're going to go to Steve, and his wife's going to hold the phone for him while he does a song. And I believe the song, well, Steve will probably tell you what the song is. So here we go. We're going to bring on Steve's wife. Hello, Steve's wife. There we go.
Showing her?
Yeah, it's showing her right now.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Did she reverse the camera?
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Somebody,
well,
did you
I don't
it?
know how to get the camera back, but
Can she hold it like that?
I don't know what she did here.
I didn't do anything.
Do you want to take a minute to work on that? And I'll do a contest. I'm going to give away 2 books. So let me do that while you get this sorted.
Okay.
Is that all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm going to mute you too, so you can say what you want. There we go. So I actually have 2 books we're going to give away. So the way this is going to work, get ready to type, because I'm going to ask a question, and whoever answers it first, I'm going to give you a copy of Stompin' Tom Connors, The Myth and the Man. It'll be sent from my publisher. If you want it unsigned, we can send it right away. If you want it signed, you got to wait a couple of weeks till I make it down to Halifax to sign them. But here we go. Here are the questions. What was the town? I just want to say William Wilcox. Thank you. Very nice. And Carl Tambo, thank you for your nice comments. What town, where was Tom performing when he got his name, Stompin' Tom? He went on stage somewhere in a bar, and the bartender introduced him as Stompin' Tom for the first time, and he adopted the name after that. And this was in 1967, and the name stayed with him for the rest of his career. So whoever can answer that question first, there we go. Mike Dunlop got it already. Wow, way to go, Mike. So Mike Dunlop won that. There we go. Mike Dunlop said Peterborough. It was Peterborough. So Mike, you win a copy of the book. You may already have the book. I don't know, but I will message you and you'll get I'll send you a copy of the book. Here's the second question. Okay. So, sorry, I said Alan Dalton. It was Mike who said it first, and then it was Alan after that. Anyway, I just want to, anyway, other people are naming other things, but Donna Keller just said, both interviews so far have been awesome. Stompin Tom taught me more about Canadian history and geography than any of my school teachers. Hi from Thunder Bay, Ontario. And then she said Peterborough. She got the answer to the question. But Donna, you know, writing this book, honestly, I learned so much about Canada because I would look at one of his books or one of his songs and I'd go, so what's he singing about there? What are the Black Donnellys? I don't know about that. What's Inco? And I learned so much about Canada in researching this book. Lara Fothrop just said she won't answer because she's already won, but we're going to do one more contest. And it looks like I lost Steve. He's gone now. First, we could only see his wife, but now he's completely gone. So we may be wrapping up the show here in a minute. Maybe I'll bring him back some other time to do a song for us. But here's your second chance to win a book. So we'll say, Mike, you don't compete because you just won, and Lara, because you've won already. Tom wrote 2 autobiographies. What was the name of his, and Steve's back, by the way, so he will be doing the song. What was the name of his first book? What did Tom call the first volume of his autobiography? Funny thing I found out when I was working on the book, while I wait for you guys to answer, is when John Farrington helped him with the first book. And when they met, Tom said, I think I can write 9 volumes. And John said, 9 volumes? Even a prime minister only gets 2. And Tom was like, I got a lot of stories. He'd already written hundreds of pages. There we go. Alan Dalton got it. It's Before the Fame. The first one to answer. This is Tom's first book called Before the Fame. And then he wrote another one called Stompin Tom and the Connors Tone. So anyway, John Farrington convinced him 2 volumes would be enough. But if you look at them, they're 2 big volumes, well over 1,100 pages. So if you want to read Tom's life story, everything's in here. Every town he went to and everybody he ever performed with. Anyway, so now we're going to go to Steve, and he's going to do a song for us. And then after that, Joe, sorry, I'm just going to get rid of this comment here. Once Before the Fame, there we go. We're going to bring Steve in. Hello, Steve.
Hi.
Okay, I can hear you. I'm going to put just you on screen, and you can sing this song. You can introduce it because you told me about how, just tell me what you told. Tell the people what you told me. Thanks, Steve.
Came off of this album here. This first album, The Northland Zone.
Yeah.
A song called May the Millwright's Daughter. And except for Tim Huss out in Calgary, I don't think anybody in the country does this song.
Okay.
But I've always loved it.
Wonderful.
In a little town called Ansonville, not very far from the paper mill, there's a girl I'm dreaming of. May the millwright's daughter, the girl I really love. Soon I'm gonna be leaving the city. The James Bay job will soon be through. Then I'll shove on back to Ansonville and my old job at the mill. Hey, I'm a-coming to marry you. Most every night I sing this song for all the boys who gather round. They like to hear me tell them May the millwright's daughter, the girl I really love. Soon I'm gonna be leaving Lucity. The James Bay job will soon be through. Then I'll shove on back to Ansonville and my old job at the mill. Hey, I'm coming to marry you. You're gonna quit the restaurant. I'm gonna bring the ring you want. I'm headed down the Moosonee line. May the millwright's daughter, I wanna make you mine. Soon I'm gonna be leaving Moosonee. The James Bay job will soon be through. Then I'll shove on back to Ansonville and my old job at the mill. Hey, I'm coming home to marry you. Hey, I'm a-coming home. Right away I'm coming home. Hey, I'm coming home to marry you.
That's great. Thank you so much. So good job. Yeah, people are saying classic, excellent choice. I played this song off a jukebox at the bar earlier this week. So there you go.
Perfect.
That was great. Thank you so much, Steve. It's nice to hear. I love hearing other people do his music as well. It shows off his songwriting, and it separates it from Tom. It's a living thing, which is great. Yeah,
Totally.
You told me, we forgot about, you have an album there you were gonna show from 1970. Is it nearby?
I bought it at the Horseshoe off of him.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, this Spud album. It's on Dominion Records.
Okay.
And it's second here.
That's his first album with Dominion, right? They're
I'm trying to get the stomp mark. There they are. You can see where he stomped on them, right near his head.
So I hope you took the record out before he stomped on it.
Yeah, good point. I did take the record out. It came shrink wrapped, and I took it out, and he stomped on it for me.
Wow, that's great. So we're going to wrap up, Steve. But one of the things I didn't talk about with you, there's a lot, but one was you did Tom's very last interview with him just 3 months before he passed away.
Yeah.
And you didn't realize quite how sick he was at the time, right?
I told you he recorded those 11 albums.
Yeah.
And he was never the same after that. That was in the winter of 2013 or 2012.
Yeah.
And he claimed that he had
chronic fatigue syndrome.
Chronic fatigue syndrome or something like that. And he just wasn't getting better, but he was hoping to go on tour that summer, and he didn't. They put out an album that summer, his last album, and he did nothing to promote it or tour. And I thought it was weird. So I called him up and I asked him if he wanted to do a show about it. And he said, I'm not feeling too well, but maybe around Christmas time we can do a show. So I said, okay. So I phoned him back around Christmas time, and he said, yeah, he can do it, but he can only do a half an hour. He usually wanted the whole hour.
Right. Okay.
He loved to talk and play the music. And so I said, okay, no problem. And he asked if I could play a couple, 2 or 3 songs together, so he had enough time to go to the washroom if he need be. So I realized he's pretty sick.
Right.
And the following,
March,
2 months?
3 months.
March, he was gone.
Wow. It's a great interview you have with him. You ask him about things he's most proud of in his life, and anyway, it's a lovely interview.
I've left that on the website, by the way. People can hear that anytime they want to.
So if they go to Back to the Sugar Camp, that used to be the name of your show, right? But it's not now. Is that correct? Yeah.
No, but it's the website's the same.
So I'll also post. I'll share the link on the Facebook page so people that follow this page can see it. But if they go look for Back to the Sugar Camp, it's from December of 2012, and it's a great interview. It was so great talking to you, Steve. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up here, and I'm going to, I guess I'll just get a couple thank yous and stuff, but thank you to you for doing this for me. I really appreciate it.
Loved it.
Oh, it was great. And like I
said,
I know,
you, Charlie.
Nice talking to you. If you want to hang around for a minute, I'm just going to say a goodbye, and then you and I can chat once I go offline. If you'll hang around for just a minute. Yeah. Thanks so much for doing this with me. It was great.
No problem.
Okay, so that is my interview with Steve Fruitman. I just wanted to, before I leave, I wanted to mention that next week, my guest is Dave Gunning. Dave Gunning is a singer-songwriter from Nova Scotia, an accomplished, wonderful performer, but also gave me some of the most moving stories that I have in the book. If you're interested in getting the book, Stompin Tom Connors, The Myth and the Man, it's actually they're running out online. There's only one copy left at Chapters Online and Amazon. I think they were out, and they have one right now, but it is available in stores at Chapters, Indigo, and Kohl's across the country. I know there's COVID out there. It's a pandemic, but if you can get out there safely, if you're at a store and you want to pick it up, you can do that, or you can also order it from my publisher. Formac.ca is the website. Formac is the publisher. FORMAC, just like it sounds, formac.ca. Anyway, so if you're looking for the book, your best chance to get it right now is in stores because they're running out online. But I want to thank Danielle and Rebecca and Kara and Jim, all at Formac Publishing, for making this possible. And I want to thank Arts Nova Scotia for making this whole thing possible, and Anthem Entertainment, they control all of Tom's music. And of course, Steve for being my guest, and you guys for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to being back with you next week when we have Dave Gunning. So I'm just going to put a little slide up here that tells you some places you can get the book. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you join me again next Thursday, 8 p.m. Atlantic time. Till then, keep stomping. Wait, I'm still here. There we go.